Hi, and I thought I would share a story that happened to both me and my best friend. And now I'm on the same canal as I was last week when I was telling you about canal folklore, but I was the other side of that bridge. And I'm doing a circular walk which will take me back to where I live. So I'm now behind the camera, which is where I feel most comfortable. So I thought I'd share with you an experience that happened to me and my best friend. Now, about 30 years ago, my best friend was living in a flat in the Peak District, or an apartment. And it was a lovely one-bedroomed apartment with a basement, and it was really big. It was quite big anyway. And the main door to her apartment, or the entrance, was kind of by the kitchen, the door into the kitchen and then into the lounge. And it had a big lounge, had a window, obviously. And from a window you could see where the front door was. And I'd stay with my best friend at weekends, all the time, almost anyway, unless I had work to do or studies. And we would often see, and we both saw it wasn't just me that saw it, but she would see it. We would both see it on separate occasions, and we would both see it when we were in the house and the room together. We often saw a man in a hat and like a trench coat standing outside the window. And we both used to think there was somebody there. And when we went to the window and lifted the net curtains which were at the window, there'd be nobody there. And we wouldn't hear them approach and we wouldn't hear them leave. Now, this was in the days before the internet, and before either of us knew what shadow people were. And this turned out to be a shadow person. And the particular type of shadow person we both saw was the Hat Man. And we didn't know this until the advent of the internet. And on many occasions, both me and my best friend saw this Hat Man, for a man it was, in kind of like the type of hat that the Hat Man wears, and a fedora, I think it's called, and it's like a fedora and a trench coat. And he'd be standing as if he'd knocked on the door, but he wouldn't be looking in the window, he'd be looking at the door as if he was expecting one of us to answer. And we often saw this Hat Man, and it was more like an outline than a shadow. And we both saw it numerous times. And she lived in that apartment for 2 years. And all the time she lived there, we would see this Hat Man at the door. And it was, I used to go down every other weekend. And every other weekend we would see it more than once a day. It didn't scare us, but it was something that we saw. But we didn't know what it was called at the time. We thought it was a person, and then we realised it wasn't because there was nobody there when we went to the door. And I remember one night in particular, she was having some friends round from college. We were both at college, and we were both going to go on to do our degrees at university. I did, but unfortunately my best friend didn't, due to health problems. And she had her college friends round, and we were going to watch some film. I can't remember what the film was, but it's irrelevant anyway. And we'd got some nibbles and drinks. And one of her friends came and was a little bit late. And we just settled down and the doorbell went, and I said, "Oh, I'll answer it." And I went to answer it, and her friend was there. And behind him was this other guy. And he was a bit of a taller geezer, and I know he had blonde hair. His hair was long, like her friend's was, because he had long hair, but his long hair was brown. And the guy behind him also had long hair, but it was blonde. So I let them in, and I was in the kitchen brewing up anyway. So her friend went through, I answered the door, saw him come through with this bloke behind him with blonde hair. Didn't think anything of it. and I was making drinks, and I said to my best friend, how are you taking your coffee? And she told me, and then I said to the guy that had just arrived, how do you want your coffee? And he told me, and I said, how does your friend want your coffee? And he went, what friend? And I went, the guy that's come with you, the guy with blonde hair. He's got long blonde hair, looks a bit like a Viking. And he went, and he came through to the kitchen and he went, describe that, run that by me again, describe that to me again. So I said, you came in, I said, I let you in, I said, and behind you was a guy taller than you. He had blonde hair, long hair like yours. I said, and he came in with you. I said, and I'm just wanting to know what he wants, your mate. He said, you've seen my shadow friend. He said, it's for shadow me. And I went, what do you mean for shadow you? What are you talking about? And he said, since I've been born, I've had this presence with me. He said, and not everybody can see it. He said, and it's a shadow me. And he said, he is exactly as you've described. Well, I felt a bit spooked at that. It's the only time I saw him. Anyway, I'm just going to pause here because there's a couple coming up and I don't want to be rattling on into a phone. So I'll be seeing you in a tick or two. So see you in a tickety-boo. Okay, so I'm going to try and film this quickly. I've tried about 5 times to film this and being distracted by people coming. But it's such a nice evening. Anyway, this final thing, it happened to me more than to my friend. And a friend of mine, well, someone very close to me, died very suddenly. And they were only young, just a bit old, you know, maybe a couple of years older than me, but, you know, young. And it happened in 1995, so going back about 30 years ago. Now, my other 2 friends that I've been talking about in this experience didn't know them, but they were a friend of mine. And then one night, about 2 weeks after my friend that I was close to, and although they weren't a best friend, it was a different kind of friend, had died, was in my best friend's flat. And it was in the early hours of the morning, about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was 3 of us there. There was me, my best friend, and another friend of ours. And the doorbell rang, and we knew there was nobody outside. And my best friend said, who's going to answer that? And I said, I'm not. And our other friends said they wouldn't. And it rang again. Anyway, the 3 of us went together and opened the door. Nobody there, not a sight nor sound of anyone. Came back in, shut the door. And it was the middle of summer, and it was a red hot summer. And it was still. There wasn't a breeze. Everything was dead still. And we came back in the lounge and we sat down, and there was this really strong draft that came through the lounge, and we could feel it because it blew all 3 of us. We could feel this draft. It was almost like you were sitting out on a balcony at night and it's drafty, and we could feel this draft, but it wasn't a cold draft. It was in line with the temperature, bearing in mind it was July. And it was red hot. It'd been a red hot summer, and we all felt this draft. And then we all felt and heard these footsteps go through the room. Bear in mind that the 3 of us were sitting down. We could hear and feel these footsteps going through the room, and then my best friend's bedroom door creaked open, and the 3 of us, I kid you not, we were absolutely terrified. And my best friend didn't want to sleep in a bedroom, so I said, look, I think we're best all sleeping in the lounge. Thankfully, the armchair and the sofa were convertible to beds. So the other friend of ours was too scared to go home, so we all slept in the lounge that night, and we just couldn't explain that. It was a really weird experience. And it was, I don't know whether that flat was haunted, but there were certainly weird things that happened there while she was living in that flat. But we've got some really good memories about it too. And I like to feel that the event with the doorbell ringing and the breeze and the footsteps, which led us all to sleeping in the lounge, was probably my close friend who I'd met through work coming to visit me after they'd passed away suddenly. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up here, and those are my spooky tales, what I'm going to call Spooky Saturday. And next Saturday, all being well, I shall be in Glastonbury, and I might try and share something with you then. So thanks for watching, and blessings.